The waitress complimented my cake recipe, but she did not know it got a spy killed. For 10 years, this entire Montmartre neighborhood has only known me as the eccentric old woman who mumbles and writes nonsense recipes into a tattered notebook every day. But then Elodie appeared. The waitress with the curious eyes has no idea she is trying to decode her own grandparents' legacy. I am Annalise, once codenamed Laurie, and the man I loved, Elias, codenamed Corbeau, was murdered by a traitor within our own organization. This notebook does not contain recipes. It contains the name of that traitor. Now, he is a powerful politician, and his henchman, the man in the grey coat sitting in the corner, has sniffed us out. The girl, Elodie, Elias's last living relative, has accidentally become the key to reopening a case that people tried to bury 40 years ago. And I have to tell this story, because I must decide whether to use the truth to get justice for the dead, or burn it to protect the living. I sit in my usual corner at the café, Le Corbeau Bleu, a habit that has lasted for 10 years. The smell of bitter coffee and the surrounding noise make me feel like everything is okay, but this is actually my cover. My real life does not happen in Paris. It exists entirely within the pages of this notebook. People think I just scribble nonsense, but in reality, every line has a purpose. I write down the names, the dates, the locations from 40 years ago. I do this so they never fade from my memory. And I write them in the form of recipes or silly poems so no one can understand their true meaning. When other people look at me, they only see a homeless old woman muttering to herself. They pity me, or they find me annoying. I accept those looks. Because when they think I am harmless, I am truly safe. Until Elodie started working here, she was different from the others. Hazelnut-coloured hair, a white apron. She brings coffee to my table every morning. She always sets down a café crème and a croissant. This morning, she said, I accidentally burned a batch of pastries. This is the nicest one left, please have it. I knew she was lying. No pastries were burned. Her kindness is real, and that worries me. In my world, kindness without a motive is often a trap. I just nodded, without a word of thanks. I did not want to encourage her. But she did not give up. She was curious. I could always feel her eyes on me when I wrote. She was not looking at me. She was looking at the notebook. She was looking at the words. Today, I decided to test her. My hand moved the pen, writing a new line. Gâteau Opéra Recipe. 3 grams of moonlight on the Seine River. 1 spoonful of silence from Notre Dame Cathedral. 2 drops of rain on Rivoli Street. A little while later, Elodie came to clear the table. I pretended not to notice, but I was watching. Her eyes stopped on the line I had just written. Most people would laugh. Or they would think I was truly mad. But she did not. Her brow furrowed slightly. She stood there for a few seconds, staring at the page. She did not see madness. She saw something that needed to be solved. It was at that moment I knew my piece was over. Elias had the same look in his eyes. He also always searched for the meaning behind things that others dismissed as nonsense. That curiosity brought him to me, and in the end, it got him killed. That day, while Elodie was cleaning the counter, the little bell on the shop door chimed. Just a normal customer walking in. But that sound, for some reason, pulled me away. It pulled me out of Paris, out of the present. It threw me back to a winter night in Berlin 40 years ago. Back then, I was not Annalise. I was Laurie. I wore silk dresses, red lipstick, and sang French love songs in a smoke-filled cabaret. My mission was to get information from a high-ranking Stasi officer. He liked to hear me sing. He thought I loved him. He was wrong. My only partner was Corbeau, the crow. His real name was Elias. We never spoke to each other directly. Not even one word. All communication had to be through code. Our codes were the songs I chose to sing each night, the underlined pages in a novel left on a park bench. He always left me a signal after every completed mission. A single blue rose, placed where only I would know. It meant, safe. You did well. To everyone else, I was Laurie, a charming, maybe even promiscuous cabaret singer. But Elias was different. He saw right through that facade. He saw Annalise. Our love had no words. It existed in the glances we exchanged across a crowded room, in the way he placed the rose, in the choice of music we used to communicate. We had a plan. After the final mission, we would disappear together. There would be no more Laurie or Corbeau, just Annalise and Elias starting a new life. A life that never came. I was startled back to the present. The doorbell had long since gone silent. My heart was beating fast. The feeling of being watched. I have had this feeling thousands of times in the past. It is never wrong. I carefully raised my head, scanning the café, and then I saw him. A man in a grey trench coat. He was sitting at a table near the entrance. He did not order coffee. He did not eat a pastry. He just sat there, holding a newspaper, but not reading it. His cold eyes were looking straight at me, without any attempt to hide it. I knew that look. It was not the look of a customer. It was the look of a hunter watching his prey. They had found me. After 40 years. My breathing became shallow. The sense of security I had built in Le Corbeau Bleu was just an illusion. That peaceful wall was crumbling. I saw Elodie wiping a nearby table, completely unaware. She was in the line of fire, just for being kind to me. I had to act. I had to know who she really was. I had to know if she could be an ally or just a liability. I stood up, pretending I was going to the restroom. As I walked past Elodie's station, I intentionally stumbled, and the notebook fell to the floor, opening to the very page where I had written the nonsense recipe. This was the final test, the test that would decide everything. I did not go to the restroom. I stood hidden behind the counter, where the owner, Pierre, was busy with the espresso machine. From here, I could see everything. Elodie picked up the notebook. She did not call out to me. She placed it on a table, but her eyes did not leave the open page. I saw her finger trace the words I had written. Her lips moved as she mumbled the names. Seine, Notre Dame, Rivoli. Her brow furrowed. She did not close the notebook right away. She stared at it for a few more seconds. I glanced at the man in the grey coat. He was still there, motionless, his eyes still fixed on me. That evening, I did not go home right away. I sat in a small bar across the street, a place dark enough that no one would recognize me. The lights in Le Corbeau Bleu stayed on long after closing time. Through the window, I saw Elodie's shadow. She was not cleaning. She was sitting at my table, with the notebook and her phone. She was looking things up. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was piecing together the street names I wrote into an old map of Paris. She was realizing the musical notes I scribbled were not random, but a syncopated passage from Debussy's Clair de Lune. At that moment I knew for certain. She had solved the first layer of the code. She was not an ordinary waitress. The next day I arrived at the café earlier than usual. Before Elodie arrived, I tore a small piece of paper from a newspaper. I wrote an address and a series of numbers on it. I tucked it into the first page of the notebook and returned to my table. When she brought my coffee, she said, "Ma'am, you forgot your notebook yesterday." "How forgetful of me," was all I said. She placed the notebook on the table. I saw her hand hesitate for a moment when she noticed the piece of paper I had tucked inside. She glanced at me, then quickly turned away. During her lunch break, she did not eat. She changed out of her apron and went straight to the address I had written. It was an old bookstore on Rue Saint-Michel. A dusty, cluttered place, perfect for hiding something. The number I gave her was the catalogue number for a book, Poems of Verlaine. She found the book on the very last shelf. Inside, between pages about love and sorrow, there was an old key and a faded photograph. I knew that photograph well. In it, a young man and woman were standing by a bridge in Berlin. They were smiling. The man was Elias. The woman was me, when I was still Annalise. On the back of the photograph was Elias's handwriting. Just a few short lines. "To my Annalise, if you are reading this, go to Le Corbeau Bleu. I have left our legacy in the safest place." And below that was a name, Elodie Dubois. I knew the moment she read that name, everything changed. Dubois was her mother's last name. The woman in the photo, Annalise, was Elias's sister. The person her family thought had disappeared in a car accident years ago. The grandmother she had never met. I am her grandmother. Elodie did not come back to the café right away. She was gone for nearly an hour. When she returned, her face was pale. She did not look at me. She silently put on her apron and went back to work, but her hands were shaking. She knew. She knew who I was. Looking at her young face, seeing the confusion and fear in her eyes, I was pulled back into the past again. The image of Elias in that photograph made the memory of the final night crystal clear. It was that fateful night at the Glianiki Bridge, the Bridge of Spies. Elias had arranged to meet me there. He said he had a roll of film. That film contained the identity of a dangerous traitor high up in our organization. It was the final mission. After that night, we were supposed to disappear together, but it was a trap. He never made it to the meeting point. I waited in the cold darkness. Then I heard a single gunshot echoing across the water. Just one. A few days later, the organization made an official announcement. Elias, codename Corbeau, was the traitor. The report stated he had been eliminated while trying to sell information to the enemy. They were lying. I knew they were lying. From that moment, my life was over. I was forced to run. I lived under countless false identities, hunted by the very people I used to serve. They wanted me silenced. This notebook was not just where I hid codes. It was my way of trying to solve the puzzle of that night. Every day, I wrote. I tried to piece the memories back together. I did it to clear the name of the man I loved. When Elodie's shift ended, she walked out of the cafe. She walked quickly, her head down. And then, I saw him. The man in the grey trench coat stood up. He did not rush. He calmly followed her. My heart stopped. He was not just watching me. He was targeting Elodie. I had to do something. I grabbed my cane and went outside. But I was too old, too slow. He had already cornered her at the street corner. Elodie stood frozen, her back against the wall. I could see the terror on her face. As I got closer, the man said something to Elodie. I could not hear it, but he was not an enemy. He showed her something in the palm of his hand. Elodie looked at it, then at him, then toward me as I hobbled closer. That evening, after the café had closed, the three of us sat inside Le Corbeau Bleu. The owner had let us stay. The man in the grey coat introduced himself as Thomas. He was an old colleague of Elias. He had never believed the official report. He had been quietly investigating Elias's death for 40 years. Elias was not the traitor, Thomas said, his voice firm. The real traitor was our superior, Renaud. He set up that trap to steal the film and climb to a more powerful position. I listened in silence. I had always suspected it, but I never had proof. Who is he now? I asked. A respected politician. A man of great influence in Europe, Thomas answered. Then he looked at my notebook, which lay on the table between us. I have been searching for the file Elias hid. I thought this notebook was the key to open it. He paused, then looked directly at me. But I was wrong. Your notebook is not the key. Elias knew he might be betrayed. This entire notebook is the file. Elodie and I both stared at him, confused. Thomas explained. The recipes, the poems, the musical notes, they are not codes that lead to something else. They are the data. When arranged in a special sequence, a sequence only you would know, they form an undeniable testimony. It exposes all of Renaud's crimes, his identity, and his network. He pointed toward my head. Your date of birth, the day you two met, the dates only the two of you would know. That is the sequence. It was then that I understood. My daily scribbling was not madness. It was my subconscious trying to protect and reassemble the final pieces. Elias had not left a key. He had turned my own memory into the key, and my life into the file itself. Thomas sat there, in the closed café, and told us everything. When he finished, the room was completely silent. Elodie looked at me, her eyes full of questions. And I, for the first time in 40 years, did not have to hold back anymore. The tears started to fall. I was not sobbing. I just sat there and let them run down my face. I cried for Elias. I cried for the life we never had. The burden I had carried for half my life was finally lifted. Renaud knows you are here now, Thomas said, breaking the silence. He knows what the notebook is. He will not leave you alone. The final confrontation was unavoidable. Renaud would send people. He would do everything to get the notebook, to silence me. That night, I could not sleep. I sat in my small rented room and looked out the window. I looked at Elodie, the granddaughter I never knew I had. She had Elias's eyes. His blood ran through her veins. I had two choices. 1. Use the notebook, expose the truth, cause a political earthquake, and get revenge for Elias. 2. Protect the future of my only grandchild. If I released the truth, Elodie's life would never be peaceful. She would be dragged into a dangerous world, the same world that took her grandparents from her. I told Elodie the whole story. I told her about Berlin, about the cabaret, about the blue roses. I told her about her brave grandfather, and about our love. She just listened in silence. A few evenings later, when the café was quiet, Elodie and I sat together by the fireplace. The owner was used to us staying late. It was cold outside, but the fire in the hearth was warm. I placed the old notebook on my lap. I turned to the last page, the page that contained the final sequence, the key to everything. And then, with Elodie as my witness, I tore that page out. Then I began to tear out the others. I threw them into the fire, page by page. Memories, codes, betrayal, all of it burned to ash. Why? Elodie asked, her voice trembling, her eyes full of tears. I turned and took her hand. Her hand was warm, because the greatest legacy your grandfather left behind was not revenge. It was you. My war is over. Through the window, I saw a figure standing across the street. It was Thomas. He saw the light from the fireplace, saw the pages burning. He stood there for a long moment, then gave a slight nod. Then, he turned and walked away into the Paris night. The hunt was over. I was no longer Laurie, a spy. I was no longer a ghost on the run. I was just Annalise, a grandmother, beginning to tell her granddaughter the real stories. No codes needed. Right in the quiet corner of Le Corbeau Bleu.